You've tuned in to the most crazy rocking metal podcast on the air. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metal from the Inside.
Everybody, welcome back to the Metal from the Inside podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Taylor, of course, and today I have a very interesting guest, a little different than what I normally have on the podcast. You know, I go for the musicians usually, but today I have Stephen Jensen joining me, which he's worn many hats in the music industry, but many of you will know him mostly from being a founder of the clothing company Wornstar, which I've been very familiar with in my time as a rock fan and going to shows and knowing the musicians and everything. So it's great to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Sydney?
I'm doing well. You know, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but, you know, this past year has been honestly just insanity. I think that's just the understatement. But how has this last year been like for you? And how is life getting a little bit back to normal for you?
Well, this past year, it's been really interesting for us. It's been really busy for us. We spent the past year designing new products and getting new designs put together, and the sales have been great. So I hate to say that I can't complain, but we've been working harder than we've ever worked to maintain that, and it's nice, and it's starting to get busy again busier for us because now bands are starting to play again. People are starting to go to shows again. And so people are starting to contact us for new clothes, of course. So far, so good for us. And just trying to stay safe and stay healthy and make sure that my crew and the people we work with are doing well.
Right. Yeah. I love that we're finally kind of getting back into live shows. I saw my first live show. I saw Guns N' Roses the other night, and it was actually surreal to be in an audience, that many people. It was like, I felt like I was doing something wrong, but it was like, oh, this is weird. But it's great to hear that things have been good for you. And, you know, I kind of wanted, when I was thinking about this interview and kind of how I wanted to structure it and ask you about just kind of your time in the industry, I really kind of wanted to start at the beginning because, you know,
Sure.
People who know you, know that, of course, you're the founder of Wornstar. You've done a lot of stuff for Dean Guitars and you're a graphic designer, but you were also a musician and, fans and everything. It all comes from somewhere. So I kind of wanted to start at the beginning for you, what it was like, to become a rock fan. What was your entrance into music in general? And, how did that lead into you becoming a musician yourself?
Sure. Well, I didn't really come from a musical household. It was mainly top 40 radio and everything, and I kind of leaned more towards the heavier rock stuff. I was born in the 70s, so the stuff I jumped on that I really liked was bands like Sweet and Queen and stuff like that. And but I didn't get too deep into being a big music fan until junior high or so. And I started hanging out with a crowd and they introduced me to some of the heavier bands, and I started buying records and stuff. And then I started playing guitar right when I started high school, when I was 15, so it was a little later. And really loved playing and really loved the music that I was listening to at the time. And started working more with my guitar teacher at the time, who took a liking to my playing style and my writing style, and he asked me to be in his band. And so I played my first gig at the Limelight in Chicago, which is now Excalibur, I believe. So I got my first taste of playing live at 16, I believe. And from there, I played a couple of small gigs like that in a couple of other bands. And then I joined a band in '88 called Barracuda. And they had already just finished a record, and I joined the band, and 2 weeks in the band, we're shooting our first music video, which ended up getting played on MTV on Headbangers Ball back in in early '89. I think my years might be off there. No, I started in '89. I was 19, and then the videos started playing when in early '90. Excuse me, when the album came out, and we shot another music video. Both ended up getting played on that. Played around in other bands throughout the early '90s, and at the same time, I was going to college for graphic design and photography. But I left the music industry as far as playing because I didn't really see the bands I was playing with going anywhere, and they really didn't like. I didn't like the same style of music that all the people I was playing with. So I kind of lost interest in the playing part of it. But I loved the music industry. I loved being part of it, and so I started designing album covers and band flyers and posters at that time. Again, about the mid '90s. Let's see. I did a lot of album covers over the years. Work with a lot of different bands, and I started in the early 2000s going to the NAMM show in Anaheim. I still wanted to be in the music industry and working with musical instrument companies. Started working with Dean Guitars in '04. That was right when Dimebag came back. So I worked with Dimebag Darrell, designing a bunch of guitars for him for his comeback. And from there, worked with several other artists, Corey and Matt from Trivium, Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, quite a few others, and maintained a good relationship with a lot of those people. And then I decided, my wife Sylvia and we started talking about this, putting together a clothing company. This was in early 2000s, about the same time I started working with Dean Guitars. And we really didn't get it kicked off the ground until we actually launched in 2009. But before starting that, I started putting together designs, started showing them around to people that I know, musicians that I work with, and seeing what they thought, trying to get honest feedback. And the feedback was great. And we started it kind of as a side project that kind of took over our lives. And now we're fast forward to 12 years later, and I'm running this company that I'm still trying to do design for and do all the photography and everything for. And my wife does a lot of the custom clothing for musicians and some of our clients. So, but yeah, I couldn't be happier with where it ended up. But I always wanted to be part of the music industry. I still work with a lot of the same people that I worked with early on. And now they're just customers of my clothing. And I still do some freelance once in a while, do album covers here and there. Most recently did, the past couple of years, I don't do a lot of them anymore, but I did a lot of albums for a band called Dope. I did the last Warrant record. I did Damon Johnson's records for the past 2 years. A blues guy named Anthony Gomes that I work with, blues rock guy, who's fantastic. And just I've got a few people that still trust me to take over to help them with their album image and their band image and do their photography and everything too.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you were talking about, kind of the bands that you were into when you were getting into music, the Sweet and, and everything, when I think of those bands, there were a lot of the bands that were, very kind of big with their clothing and everything, like that's kind of what they were, mostly known for sometimes image wise. And it's funny that, you went on to then develop this own clothing company, kind of your own, and kind of be a part of that in a way.
Well, yeah, I when I started playing, it was the mid to late '80s. So the music I was listening to was I still loved all that, the Sweet and Queen and all that. It was a little bit more of a glam rock kind of thing. But I started listening to heavier stuff. I didn't get too heavy. There are some really heavy bands that I listen to, but mostly I was into songs and good melody and stuff. So like my first album that I think I bought at the time was Dawkins' Tooth and Nail, and that's what listening to George Lynch play. That's what made me want to play guitar. So it was a little bit more bands like that. It was bands like Dokken, and then eventually Lynch Mob, and Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Trying to think of bands from then I listened to, but all the typical radio, the stuff that was played on the radio was what I liked the most. I think because I liked good songs, good hooks.
Yeah, I mean, we just became best friends because Dawkins, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. Well, you actually worked with George, right? When you were with Dean, right? Am I correct?
It wasn't for Dean, but yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was for Washburn. George was an ESP player, but he had a deal with Randall Amplifiers, and Randall Amplifiers was also Washburn Guitars. And a good friend of mine was the artist relations guy over at Washburn Randall, and we were at NAM, and he was meeting with George, and I get a text from him that says, I'm walking the NAM floor, and I get a text from him, and he goes, "Hey, do you have time to meet with me and George Lynch and talk about a guitar design?" I said, "I'll be right there." So that was kind of cool, getting to sit across the table and talk shop with George Lynch, my idol at the time. Well, my idol for a long time, and talk with him about guitars. But we designed an acoustic guitar that came out. Gosh, I can't remember what year that was. Early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I always focus on when I talk to, a lot of musicians or, people who work in the industry, because I feel that way too. And I get to speak with a musician or somebody that I've admired for so long, like, I can't even imagine, you're speaking about like designing a guitar for him, and he was the whole reason that you wanted to play guitar. It must be sometimes, I guess, surreal to kind of have that come full circle.
Oh, it is. It's not something I told him, but
I know you got to keep
but yeah. I always say that this kind of the work that I do, being with this company and then my design work, is really a series of holy crap moments a lot. So there's a lot of times I'm kind of pinching myself, and it's really cool to be working for some of the people that I idolize, and more importantly, them trusting me with working for them, with helping, because basically when I'm designing a guitar, or I'm designing their albums or designing their clothes, it's trusting me with their image. There are some bands where Dope is a good example of a band that I worked with for a long time, well over a decade, and they kind of treated me like a fifth member of the band, where I was as important to their image as everything else that they had done.
And it's interesting because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, obviously your graphic design work, which is such a huge part of what you do. How did you make that transition into, being in the music industry, playing in a band, to then, graduating with, a degree in that kind of field? Because, I mean, I know that you kind of left the music industry, but what drew you to wanting to learn graphic design and kind of be a part of that world?
Well, I've always been drawn to illustrating, drawing, painting, to the arts in general. That came before music for me. And in junior high, I developed that even more. High school, I developed it even more. And I always knew I wanted to do something in the arts industry. Excuse me, whether it was graphic, photography, or music. And when I graduated with my associate's degree in fine art, where I learned about painting and art history and all of that sort of thing. And I decided I really wanted to keep doing music, or wanted to keep doing design for the music industry. So a lot of my projects were designing an album cover, or designing a promo piece for a band, or movies too. I like doing movie posters, for example. But then I decided I really had an eye for photography, and I started doing photography after I got my associate's degree. And when I was originally I went to Columbia College of Chicago, which is where I got my BA. And originally I was a photography major, but this was at the time when we were still shooting on film. This was the early 90s, and digital hadn't really got there yet. But I also I was really good with computers and computer graphic design. Started playing with the first Mac that I'd seen. And when I was going to college at Columbia, I started teaching myself the applications that they had. Illustrator was early then. Photoshop was version 2.0 then. So I started working in Photoshop and started playing with that. And again, I was doing album covers and promo posters and that sort of thing. So I switched. I realized that I was a good photographer, but I wasn't really good in the darkroom. But I was really good at doing the computer work, doing the computer graphic design, and even traditional graphic design. So I switched my major and became a graphic design major. And then, later on, when the digital photography caught up with it, I jumped back into the photography because I knew that I could take the photography that I did and I could make it look even cooler in post doing Photoshop work on it.
Yeah. And when it comes to the album covers, do you have one specific album cover or a couple that to you are the most memorable that you've done over the course of your career?
Most memorable. Oh gosh, there's some that were a lot of work. There's some that were better than others. No, I don't really have a favorite. I enjoy working on every project, just like every design that I do. As long as the idea is good and the people that I'm working with are good, I'm really happy with it. I really liked doing the last Warrant cover because, again, it was a band that I kind of grew up with. I remember seeing them before their first album even came out, and seeing them live in Chicago. And so it was exciting to get asked to work with them on that record. And I really enjoyed it because I pitched them a concept. They loved where I was going with it. And they let me do pretty much whatever I wanted to do with it. But I never, Damon Johnson's kind of the same thing. Damon Johnson plays with, he's solo now. He did his last two solo records, and he played with Alice Cooper and Brother Kane. I was a big fan of. Saw him live way back when, and working with him is fantastic. I just like. It's not about the artwork as much as it is the people that I work with. I really enjoy working with the certain people that trust me to do what I do and that let me explore. And Damon's one of those guys too. When we did his Memoirs of an Uprising album cover, I pitched him an idea and he was like, he couldn't believe how right on it was for him. So, I love doing that. I love just working with different people rather than specific projects.
And you've had this, Wornstar for, like you said, since 2009. And, I know you used to do the album covers a little bit more frequently before then, but is it nice now sometimes, when you do have the chance to do them, it's a little nice kind of change of pace from the work that you do with Wornstar?
That's exactly what it is. It's just, I do it to keep me fresh, just to keep my chops up design wise. And I like coming up with a cool idea and seeing if we can execute it, whether it's a photograph or an illustration. So it's a little bit different than trying to, like with Wornstar, we're also trying to expand the look of that. But with album cover design, it allows me to do something completely different, whether, it's again, the Warrant cover or the Damon Johnson cover, which is totally different. And then I did Johnny Winter's last two records. So that's blues. So I like doing different things. It just keeps me fresh. When I do those, I usually study what's going on now. What designs, what kind of designs are going on in the music industry. Music and fashion are usually pretty close, at least the stuff that I like. So it kind of comes easy, but it is a different animal, and I really enjoy doing it. I don't get to do it enough as much as I'd want to, but I do enjoy the projects that I get.
And while we're on the topic of things that you designed, you have your pinball machine beautifully displayed behind you.
Yes.
That you worked on with Stern Pinball. So give me a little bit of insight into that, because that must also be a whole different world than just, album covers and Wornstar.
It is. I was the art director at Stern for a little over a year. This was probably about 10 years ago. 8 years ago. It was, I got asked, they lost their art director, and I was, this was when Wornstar was still a part-time project where it was still growing. And so, and this was in, the freelance work I was doing wasn't paying great. People were late to pay and all that. So I got offered a gig to be the art director over there. And I jumped at it because it was the entertainment industry. I loved pinball. So I went in there, I was the art director. My first project I worked on was AC/DC. And it's always funny because the guy that got me the job there was the same guy that worked over at Washburn. And so we both left the music industry. It took us to leaving the music industry to work with a band like AC/DC. And so I did AC/DC, I did X-Men, Metallica, I'm forgetting Avengers, The Walking Dead. But before that, I was doing photography for them. I was photographing all their products, all their new pinball machines. And then after I left right after I finished Metallica, and then I got asked to do Walking Dead because it was right up my alley design wise. So I did The Walking Dead for them, and then I still, for the past 8 years, continued to do photography for them. And then so I talked to them all the time, and they would tell me about the new projects that are coming down the pike. And Led Zeppelin was the one that came up, and they asked if I'd be interested in doing it. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be interested in doing it. I'd totally be interested in doing it. I love Led Zeppelin. It's one of my favorite bands. So they kicked it around for a while. They were talking to other illustrators. But working with a license like that, Led Zeppelin was really strict on what they wanted on it, what we can use for artwork. So I'm really good when I'm challenged like that. So they were talking over there, and they're like, you know what, Stefan's the guy. We got to get him to do it. He's the right guy for the job. And I said, well, you pull the trigger and let me know. And if you want me to do it, I'll do it. I would love to do it. So we worked on that for the projects like that usually take about 12 to 18 months. So you got to keep your mouth shut for 12 to 18 months, which is not always the easiest thing to do when you're working on a project like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So I got to design 3 Led Zeppelin pinball machines. I finally got mine in here a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to go with the Led Zeppelin 1 package because that's so iconic to me. One of the best album covers ever designed. So, but yeah, I love doing it, stuff like that. And to me, it's all design. I approach each one kind of the same mentality. Washing machine, pinball machine, I don't care what it is. I can design it. I can make it look cool. I'm confident in that. So I love working on stuff like that. And if they offered me another cool title, I would do it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about a pinball machine, and it's not just the outside or the top, it's the entire inside of the pinball machine.
The playfield is the heart. Yeah, the playfield is the hardest thing to design. And that's where all the neat work is in there. And that's where I was able to explore a little bit more. It was really fun because I had to stick with a lot of existing artwork, and I was limited to what photos I can use of the band. And everybody had to be treated the same way. There's certain rules when you deal with a license, but I took some liberties when I did that. I did my artwork based on an existing poster from early 70s, but I did it as if that poster were done modern. So I redid it with some of the same elements and stuff, but it kind of had the same feel as if they were designing that poster in 2020. This is what I thought they would do.
Yeah, there's a store in my hometown. My friend Stephen Keeler has a record store / a pinball, basically like arcade, and he got the Led Zeppelin 3 one. So when he got that, I was like, that's one of my favorite Led Zeppelin albums, and I was like, oh, that's so great. So I absolutely love it. They came out awesome.
Thank you so much.
So I want to go back to Wornstar just a little bit because I think it's really interesting that your wife is also such a key part of this. And how has it been in kind of going into clothing, because I know that that's kind of a different realm. You've done a lot of graphic stuff, obviously, as we've talked about, that's on the computer, and now you're dealing with something that's a little tangible, and people wear it and all that fun stuff. So how has it been for you to kind of learn some new skills in that realm?
Well, it's been really interesting. It's been a learning experience for the past 12 years. My wife and I, Sylvia, we knew nothing about the fashion industry. We like it. We enjoyed it a lot. There's a lot of stuff we like about the fashion industry, but it was a whole different animal. She had always been, she grew up designing clothing and had always designed clothing for her dolls and stuff when she was a little kid. So when we started talking about doing this clothing thing. We did it kind of out of necessity, really, because it was 2009. Again, back to the economy was in the toilet, and my freelance clients weren't paying their bills, so we had to find a way to make money. And we started the clothing company as a side business, really, as a way to bring people into the photo studio when I was shooting band photos. That way, so for example, Sylvia would design clothes. She would style the clothing for a band's photo shoot, either buy clothing and piece it together, or would design and make her own. And she would dress a lot of the artists that we would shoot. And we thought, well, this is a great way to differentiate ourselves in the Chicago scene as far as doing music photography, because we'd be the only photo studio that had a seamstress on staff, not seamstress, a stylist on staff. So where we can make, there's a lot of bands that know what their image is, but then there's a lot that are not really good with it. And so we would dress them as well. So it started out as a side thing, and pretty soon artists were starting to ask her to buy the clothing she was designing for them, or even the stuff she was just curating for them. We thought, okay, maybe we're onto something here. And so we thought this is something we can turn into a little business. So we started designing a few pieces, putting them up on eBay, and they would go like that. And then we decided to try and put together a brand and put together a website. And we did. And that's what we launched that in September of 2009. And it started slow, as all businesses do. But we sold out of the first run of t-shirts we did, and we take all the money that we make and we try and put it right back into growing something, because we thought we really have something here. Let's grow it and see if we can turn this into something that we can make a living off of. And that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, Wornstar is just one of those brands that, I'm only 21, so me being in the music industry as I've gotten into this field, Wornstar has always been one of those brands that, like, I feel like I've known really well, and all the musicians that I know that are up and coming have always like, oh, I want to get Wornstar stuff, and it'd be so cool to be endorsed by Wornstar. So I feel like it's really cool that you guys went from that to now being on that level.
Well, thank you. It's still a small company. I mean, I'm sitting in our showroom here, which isn't that big. It's we're still only 8 employees total, and we still do everything ourselves. I've got manufacturers that I work with that manufacture the t-shirts and some of the denim and stuff for us, but all the custom work is all done here. And we really enjoy what we do, and we're just trying to grow it. And it's, there's people that think it's a bigger company than it is, but that's just because I do all the design and the art direction and creative direction on it, and that's what I do. I'm used to building brands and making them look bigger than they are. So people think we're a big corporation when it's just a small family-owned business. We started this thing. Our first showroom was in our garage, and that was 10 years ago. And we've only been in this location, which we're about to outgrow, for just over 5 years. So still small, but we're hoping to continue to grow it. I'm glad people think it's bigger than it is. But we're still small and humble, family-owned company.
Right. I also think too, when you see musicians that seems, larger than life, wearing these clothes, and it makes the whole thing seem larger than life in a way. So
yeah, the artists we work with, we're really happy with. They do a fantastic job promoting us, and everybody's different. We're just trying to grow and expand and become even more of a brand. That's what I've always kind of done when I work with the different companies. I'm always focused on trying to build a good brand with a good name that people know the quality of. And that's what we're trying to focus on, making sure the quality of the garments are great, making sure that the customer service is getting better all the time. things like that. And we're trying to expand the designs and expand into other markets and other genres. We're mostly rock and hard rock and heavy metal, but I have a lot of country artists and blues artists and hip hop artists. So I love all different kinds of music. So I love doing stuff outside of what I'm used to.
Yeah. And it's important to note too that it's not only musicians that can wear your clothes, regular fans and people can also, wear Wornstar and shop on the website and stuff like that too.
That's mostly what we gear towards. Yes, we
Yeah.
do. We try and make stuff for everyday wear, and then the rock stars like to have something custom. Sometimes we do that for regular customers as well. So we get a lot of people that buy our clothes to ride their motorcycles. We have some professional wrestlers that wear our clothes. It's funny, we get magicians that wear our clothes, chefs, celebrity chefs. It's anybody that wants the look that we're doing. And so we couldn't be happier with that.
Yeah. And one thing that it's kind of a vague question, but I
Sure.
ask a lot of, business owners and, people like you who've built something from the ground up, what is like a piece of advice that you would give to somebody kind of starting a business like this or starting a venture like this, from the beginning?
Well, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you do it because you love it. If you're looking to do it to get rich, to make money, that's not going to happen. You got to be willing to work hard and love what you're doing. I mean, we've been at this business for 12 years, and the first 10 of those years, my wife and I didn't pay ourselves. So it took a while to get to that point where we knew this company was stable enough to where we can make money at it. But we love what we do, and we love the people we work with. So that's why we continue to do what we do. I know a lot of other clothing companies, a lot of other people that own clothing companies, and some of them I think do it for the wrong reasons. I'm not looking to be. My wife and I, we love being behind the scenes. We don't want to be a rock star. We don't want to be out there. There's so many people out there that own a clothing company that's all about them. It's all about getting their photo out there or whatever. And I don't really care about that. That's part of the reason I love being in the music industry. I've always loved doing stuff behind the scenes. I love being in the recording studio, the photo studio, the side of the stage, backstage, all that stuff. It's just, I love the entire creative process. So if you love what you're doing, continue to do it. Just be prepared to work and work a lot. We get a lot of people that say, I want to do what you do because then you can make your own hours. And the joke we have is, we get to decide which 20 hours out of the day we work.
Seriously.
It's a lot of work and a lot of weekends, a lot of late nights, but my wife and I are workaholics. We love it.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. You got to do it because you love it. And it's like, even for me, like in this, doing this podcast, it's like, I'm not even anywhere near as a business as you guys are. And it's a lot of work. And I don't think people realize it's weekends, it's late nights, it's days, it's the whole shebang.
Well, that's kind of the reason why I got out of the playing side. Cause I liked it. I liked it a lot. There's nothing like being on stage. It's fantastic. But I loved the creative process more. I loved writing and recording and being in the studio. So I just didn't think I didn't want to do a bunch of touring. I didn't mind it. I didn't want to do a bunch of that. So I knew that wasn't really for me. So I got out of that and focused on what I love. And as far as you're concerned, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I watched a few of your podcasts, and I think you're one of the better ones out there. So just keep doing what you're doing. It's really, really good. And the great thing is, it's clear that you love what you're doing. It's clear that you're a fan of all the people that you talk to, and don't ever lose that. That's one of the things that Sylvia and I are too, is we're fans of everybody we work with. We don't put them on a pedestal, but we like being equal and working with them. But we are definitely fans of the people we work with.
Yeah, I always look at it that way, and it's some of my favorite musicians always still feel that way too about the people that they were influenced by and the people that they get to work with. And I think, kind of like you said, once you lose that, it's kind of all for nothing. So
Right.
thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that too.
Oh, I mean it. You're great.
Thank you. It was so great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us and me. And everybody, please go check out wornstar.com. You can go check out all the clothes. Be sure to keep up with Stefan and everything that him and Sylvia are doing, because their company is great and larger than life for sure. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sydney.